And welcome.
Welcome, folks. It is
Excited
chilly.
to see where this goes.
It is brisk. Make this a December to remember. It is December 9th, 2021.
Crisp. It feels good.
It is. Feels crisp. Feels awesome. December 9th, 2021. Welcome aboard, folks. This is the Crushing Iron Podcast. We are episode 537.
Yeah, we are.
Can I say Wisconsin in the house? In air quotes. Is that what the young kids are saying now? Wisconsin be in the house. We are yeeting.
Yeah, I knew it was
I was doing, you wanted to go yeet
They
too,
yeeted.
didn't you? Yeah, they yeeted their way here. We learned yesterday. We had it is a year a Wisconsin band. We just had Ben who came in for some analysis. He's from Wisconsin. We had Katie. We had the Katies in yesterday, and they're from Wisconsin, and they also talked to us about yeeting, which is what to vigorously
discard,
which is apparently a new thing that kids say.
Which is so bad.
Listen, if you want to know
They're
why,
just making things up.
If you want to know why the planet is where we are, it's because we come up with the word yeet. First of all, who at the course of your day, how many people throw something or discard it vigorously?
I know. It's like, and the example they used was they pounded their soda.
Their soda can. They yeeted their soda can.
Didn't even say yeet. I don't even.
Like how vigorously do you throw a light piece of aluminum, right? Like, who does that? Maybe you could see, like, he yeeted the football. Like he spiked it. It's like, anyway, before we yeet our way out of your hearts and minds, welcome again. But your first time tuning in, we appreciate you. We know you have a lot of options, and you're probably discussing those now in the triathlon podcast universe and just podcasts in general. So we appreciate you giving us our time. We cover it all. We cover swim, bike, and run specific podcasts. We do race recaps. We do race previews. Sometimes I'm on the occasional guest. But for the most part, Mike and I, as coaches, athletes, best friends, sit back, relax, have an open, honest discussion about what we're going through, what our athletes are going through. We work with a very wide variety of athletes of all different abilities and ages. Our youngest athlete is 17. Our oldest is 72. And they are across the globe, from beginners to elite level amateurs. We use you kind of gauge the feel of either our team as a whole or even individuals to drive the discussion for the day. Sometimes, like today, we will hop in our closed group, which is on Facebook. It's Crushing Iron Group. If you want to be a part of that conversation, answer one simple question, we'll let you in, and we'll offer up a little bit of Q&A for athletes to chime in and our listeners to ask questions, and we'll try to get to those as best we can. We are not experts. We are definitely, most certainly not professionals, but we're experienced. We've been around the block. We made a lot of mistakes, had some successes, and hopefully we can share that to you in a light, fun, consumable, conversational way.
Yeah. And obviously we know how to appeal to the youth.
Yes, we do. The millennial crowd, I want to check our stats. We should probably check our podcast stats.
I think our stats are a little on the older side, but
sure.
I feel like this is what companies do now. They just go completely away from the people who love their product and try to seduce people who are not going to be interested ever by being dumb and saying things like yeet.
Yes, it's like the Red Bull girls walking into the old timey bar in like the middle of Wisconsin in the winter. Let's try to get these 60-year-olds who've been drinking like dark Budweiser.
That might work.
Yeah, it could might work for a minute, right?
It certainly would work for that.
It might work for just a minute.
Try this in the morning.
But yeah, it's
one more thing. Speaking of Wisconsin, since we're on it,
oh boy,
I know we have a lot of Indiana fans out there. But and I'm not usually trying to be bragging, but last night we were down 22 points to Indiana at the end of the first half and came back and won.
You yeeted that deficit.
You
discarded it vigorously, and you came back for the win. you yeeted the whole program.
That's hard. They haven't won in Wisconsin in over 20 years. I don't think.
Ooh, that's gonna stink.
It stinks, man.
That's good. That's how coaches lose their job.
Well, a lot have lost their job on the way. I think Bobby Knight was the last person to win at Wisconsin.
I liked Bobby Knight. He was salty.
Super salty.
Very salty. But no, anyway. Seriously, we won't talk about yeeting anymore. What I did want to talk about as we wait for some of the questions to come in on the Q&A is we've basically done 3 swim analysis. Well, first, I just want to say this. Like, if you a couple of housekeeping things, and just a reminder is we do have the club package going on right now that's good through December 15th. So you got, if you're procrastinating, which most of you do, you got 6 days to sign up for that. It's let us basically program your year around your races, take away that stress off your life. That's available on our website, C26Triathlon.com. Click on that. We have the club package, which is the club membership. We have the club plus, which gets a little bit of feedback. And then what a lot of people have been taking advantage of is the club hub package, which you basically invented. Whereas you come and you get a hub visit, you get your club plan, and then you get 2 nights stay in the townhome. And we had the Katies come in yesterday, and obviously you and I as coaches, like, we love the hands-on, the swim analysis, the runs. We like all the technical and the training stuff, whatever the athletes are, but it's the conversations that I think both you and I enjoy the most. And we went to lunch yesterday, and we spent well over 2 hours at our favorite lunch spot talking about basically nothing triathlon related. And it's just awesome. And so whether you're an athlete of ours or a listener, it's really is. And it's something that Mike and I enjoy a lot, is just sit back and getting to know people on a real authentic level. And it is something that both he and I enjoy a lot. It's just really getting to know people and talking about, it's like this podcast, we use triathlon as a vessel for the topic and to drive the discussion. And we end up talking about life, and a little bit of triathlon, because that's the piece that we're all part of is living and being on this planet and dealing with the things that we do. So I just want to say, and thank the Katies for making that a great experience yesterday. I really enjoyed it, and I enjoyed our conversation.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more, man. But it is fun. I mean, We've said this since the beginning. We were on podcast 5, and we're like, damn, we're going to run out of things to talk about.
Yes, we are.
And now we're on 537.
Which we were reminded of in one of our very first negative reviews.
Oh, yeah, there's no way these guys can keep it going.
You can't keep it going. Well,
stick it to you. When you do this, but it did. It opened up a whole new world, because it is this thing where we're all going through triathlon at different times in the year and trying to figure out how to make things work together. But it goes so much deeper than that. Like I always say, I think triathlon is a super important piece towards helping you, define your own lifestyle, the perfect lifestyle for you. And in order to, if we were to put that as the only thing we ever talked about, I think we'd be really, leaving the whole thing short, because there's so much more that goes on, obviously, in life. But I mean, triathlon is one of those things that I think becomes, and I know it happened for me for a long time, it became really almost addicting. But it was great, because it took me from somewhere that I didn't want to be into somewhere else I wanted to be. But then we always talk, I think one of our biggest things is kind of talking about the nuance about how that fits into everything and makes your whole life hopefully better and more well-rounded and more energized and happy and things like that. So I'm glad we did that. I mean, that was probably the only way this thing would keep going, but
yeah, it is.
I think that's very important to us. It always has been. I think, we talked about triathlon all the time, but we always got into other things. And that's just, I don't know. I mean, the essence of everything that we're about really.
I think it's harder for people to communicate these days, really more than ever, via, because we can text or message or email or not do anything. And so I think it's great to have like a common denominator that we have, which is triathlon and training. And we have a common thread, right? Which is endurance sports and racing. And that usually just kind of opens up, a comfortable can of worms to us to kind of like jumpstart the conversation, and then it leads us down to the thing that, we can make analogies to life and what's going on and how are we feeling. And, it reminds me a lot of this, because like yesterday when we were having lunch, we were like, they both work in the medical and the health field and talking about boundaries and stuff like that. Yeah, we can relate. It's like, it's all what we're doing and what we're a part of is all very, very, very similar. Like we all think that, which is like training, right? And coaching, it's like 80% of sports is all the same. Like it's the training, it's just the small differences, especially for endurance sports. It's just the small nuances and things between sports that are, that are very, very different. We all like to think we're very special, right? We're very, very special. We have very unique problems that no one else can probably fathom or wrap their brains around because you don't work in the same field. But if you remove a lot of the noise and, some of the minor specifics, like we're all kind of going through the same shit. And then that's why we love coming in here and talking for 2 hours a week and then just talking in the office. And when athletes come in, being able to talk to them, it really is. It's gratifying and very, very enjoyable.
It is. I remember I used to listen to Joe Rogan's podcast a lot, and he would always say that. He goes, the reason I love this so much is because whenever do you get it, because he does these 3-hour podcasts, he goes, whenever do people get a chance to sit down and talk to somebody interesting, focused, one-on-one with no interruptions for 3 hours? It's like no one ever does that.
Yeah, no one ever does that.
I don't know if anyone ever did that, but it does bring up a good point. I think that the thing about triathletes to me is always that they're kind of searching for something better, a better way to do things. I think that's kind of the common denominator in a lot of ways, is people looking for better lifestyle, just more vibrancy in their life and all these types of things. And when you get people like that around, you really start to kind of, dig through the weeds and figure things out. And I think it's an endless puzzle, but to me, it's always been fascinating. To me, that's almost the most fascinating thing about life, is trying to figure it out, and everybody's got an answer these days, but like you always talk about, there are always this 10 ways to turn it around. It's just never that simple, seemingly.
Never.
And, you could have the 10 best things ever, and it might be the right road, but to how you get to that consistency in that path is like the challenge a lot of times.
Yeah, and being able to use it. It's a lot like, speaking of swimming, as I digress into swimming, we had done like basically 3 swim analysis in a row. And and I know, yes, we have 8 or 9 swimming related podcasts, but it seems to be a topic that a lot of people think about. And it's a very confusing, it's the most complex of the 3 to do, right? But it has the least amount of metrics attached to it, which is like the worst thing ever, right? You have cycling, which is just literally you sit on your bike and you pedal. But now you have all these analytics of power meters and heart rate monitors and, pedaling efficiency and, your pedal stroke, and you got all these power curves, and you can track things and testing. Running's the same way. Now people run with these ridiculous power meters, and they have heart rate, and they have, they will stare at their watch. It's like, but they're just easy, right? Everybody can run. You just walk out the door and you go run. Swimming has become, of the 3, like the most rawest, purest of the 3, but is combine that with not that much gadgetry, but
they're trying, man.
They're desperately trying, because that's going to get more people in the pool. But it is still the most confusing. It is still the piece, the sport within the 3 that has the most crappy information out there. It seems to be the most complex. It's the most technical, and it's the most overwhelming. And it is the hardest to do. It's the hardest to make time for now with you got trainers, you can train in your house, you can go run pretty much wherever you want to, you can hop on a treadmill. Swimming also takes the most time to do. And there's just so much, there's a whole lot of advice out there on how to swim. And I realized this even more this morning with Ben, and then yesterday with the Katie's, and a couple comments that athletes made in Training Peaks over the last few days, is small things like, swimming wide, or, reaching, what we call reaching for the corners, or 2 things that really stuck with the athletes this morning and yesterday was your hips, the importance of your hips, but also I've said this before on a couple of podcasts, but how important people disregard how important your hips are to swimming. Most people talk about rotating your hips side to side as being important, but really it's like hip drive. But what I found this morning and yesterday was how influential a simple wrist bend can be for most people. It was a light bulb moment this morning for Ben. It was a light bulb moment for Katie yesterday. Because and again, this may turn into a How Not to Suck at Swimming podcast, but it's going to be all about swimming, because I'm starting and I'm never going to stop. Was a couple of things. One, I think most athletes, especially if you've been taught swimming later on in life, where you have to, and athletes are very type A, as you know, they think. So when you get athletes who like to think a lot and who overanalyze and overcalculate things, they hop in the pool, which again is the most technique driven of the 3, and they have all these steps they have to think through. So as they're teaching themselves how to swim, or on YouTube, or on some masterclass, or from the personal trainer at the Y, they go through this stroke very slowly. They move their arms in the shape of a clock. We've talked about this before. And most people, not most, but a lot of athletes enter the water and they basically slap the top of the water, or they touch it with like their hand basically flat, like their arm is completely, hopefully completely extended, but flat. And when if you're listening to this and you have a place to stand, I would encourage you to stand up and just kind of put your arms straight out in front of you. And that's how most people enter the water. But a simple thing like entering the water by just slightly breaking your wrist, like pointing your hand down a little bit. And when you do that a little bit, it also pops your elbow up. If it pops your elbow up, it also pops your shoulder up. When you enter the water with your hand, what I would consider broken a little bit or bent down, it allows you to get into your stroke quicker. You actually go and get into the water. Stop aiming for the top of the water. Aim 4 to 6 inches below the surface, because what you want to do is you want to continue to create and keep that momentum. You want to actually get into your stroke, which combining that with most athletes have very, very poor body positioning. Well, the slower you go in the water, okay, the less pulling you're doing, the more your body is going to sink. So the less time, so when you're not in a catch phase, when you're not pushing water below you, your body is going to start to sink. If you are pushing water below, your body is going to be more likely to stay on top of the surface. Swimming is all about one thing: the amount of water you can push beneath you versus the least amount of you in the water. And if you're pausing out in front because you're aiming for the surface of the water, which is what we kind of talked about this morning with Ben, it was like when you're teaching yourself how to swim, when your hand hits the top of the water, that's when you're like, all right, now I'm in the water. Now I start my catch phase. And while you're thinking, nothing is happening. You're actually just moving your hand down again, like your hand goes in like looks like the hand of a clock, instead of going in your catches. But what happens if you actually get your wrist to bend and get into your stroke, or as Hayden likes to say, scoop it? You can do your scoops. You get into your stroke quicker, which also allows you to be higher. And that was one of the things that when we have athletes that come in and we say, I don't want to offend you, but you swim very soft, right? You swim very delicate. It's like you're afraid to touch. It's like the surface of the water is like a flat top, right? It's gone high. It's going to burn you. You barely get to it and you touch it and then you kind of get a stroke. All the time you spend slowing yourself down is slowing your stroke down. It also obviously slows yourself down, but also causes your body to sink. Mm-hmm. You mean to keep talking, or
no? I can throw a thought in there. Like it sounds like if you get the scoop going, but with swimming to me is like that overthinking is what I always try to take out of the equation. So I tell a lot of athletes actually because of like what you said earlier about the hips, right? And people think that means that sort of back and forth kind of thing. But to me, it's just like I try to think about swimming from my hips, and that's all I think about. So it's kind of like I was telling people the other day to run to a cadence of a song, and that sort of fixes things naturally, because if you have a nice cadence going and you got if you're just running with a flow, that like things start happening naturally. And to me, when you're swimming, if you're thinking about driving from the hips, that kind of takes a lot of things out of your head, and it sort of just makes you swim with better form. I think, at least it's worked for me and a lot of people I've talked to. But instead of overcomplicating and thinking about, okay, my arm's coming at this range, whatever, it's just like if you're really kind of thrusting from the hips and making that happen as more of a full body experience that we always, talk about the lats, getting everything in your core involved. That's when stuff starts happening, like to me. But, obviously what's the problem? If you don't have a strong core and if you're not strong enough, and I think that's one of the most underestimated elements of swimming is being in swim shape and having the body to handle doing that sort of thing rather than, ripping your shoulders out over, a couple thousand yards, because a lot of people end up doing that because they try to muscle it instead of using the whole body, but your body has to be ready for that.
And that is a huge issue. And that was one thing we talked about this morning, was that you have to have swim fitness to hold technique. But most people head to the pool and all they care about is, all right, I got to do my catch-up drill. I got to do my one side behind me, one side in front of me. I got to kick on my side. I'm going to do that for 450s. Then I'm going to grab my kickboard and I'm going to kick, 450s for kick and work on my kick. You're not working. on anything. That might sound offensive, but you're not working on anything. In order to gain and cement concrete a technique that becomes a behavior, it is now your permanent movement pattern. You have to be able to do it consistently all the time. That's how it becomes a habit. Not for 450s here or 450s there or 650s here and 525s here. Take a break for 2 minutes, do it here. Because what you're also not doing, and then you're like, oh, well, I'm going to swim and I just can't put it all together. It's because you don't have the general fitness to hold it, right? Like when you run long and you're running longer than you should because you don't have that shape, what happens? Your form starts to fail, right? You can't, even though you know how to run, your form falls. Same thing, and we use this analogy a ton. Tiger Woods on the golf course, Michael Jordan in the basketball, fourth quarter, his shot hits the front of the rim. Did he forget how to shoot? Nope. It's tired, right? Same thing with, a golfer. Like, they start hitting everything short. Then they forget how to putt? No, they're tired. Everybody becomes weaker when they become tired. And triathletes spend so much time trying to perfect drills that they just forget that in swimming, you have to have fitness to hold that. Because what will happen is you can hop in the swim at 2,000, and for about 100 meters, you might be able to hold that perfect form you've been working on with your drills. And then guess what? You're going to swim 1,900 yards straight. And guess what habit you're going to take home? The 1,900 yards, not the 100. It's like the ones who I'm thinking I'm going to work on my kick this week. I'm going to do 450. Wait a minute. So of the 8,000 yards you're going to swim this week, you're going to allocate 400 yards to kicking, and you really, truly think that's going to make a substantial long-term difference? No. You're wasting your time. If you want to choose to get better at something, especially like swimming, you have to have the fitness to hold that form for a long period of time, because it's the length of time that you do it and the repetitive nature of it that allows you to keep it longer. So don't spend so much time. Well, I have to have perfect technique before we do it. You have to actually have the fitness to hold it, and then that's how you get down the line. You can do both, but you can't just be obsessed with doing 2,000 yards of drills and not actually applying it to where you're also doing, creating better fitness.
Mm-hmm. So how do you go about, in your mind, I think the answer is going to be, that's why we assign a lot of short, hard work, right? Is that?
Because you can hold it, right? It's like, everybody leaves the tank.
A lot of people will say, well, I got to swim 3,000 yards to get fit or whatever. But would you suggest it's better to go harder in shorter intervals?
100%.
Okay.
Swimming a 3,000 straight is, you do it just because you're trying to see what your race pace might be or get out of the pool faster. It's not making you faster. You're just doing it to get it over with. 25s, 50s, 100s, those are your best friends. Because you can hold perfect form for a 25, right? That's what I was discussing this morning. It's like, next time you go to the pool, you do 40, 50s, break, and pick 3 things to work on. That's one of the things that people just never do. They go, I don't think I'm going to work on this day. And then after about 200, they forget what even they're on. They just swim mindlessly to get it over with. And they wonder why they don't get better. Head to the pool. You're going to do 40, 50s. And pick 3 things to work on. Let's say you're going to work on reaching the corner. So, so staying wide, reaching far out, reaching those the corner in your right, corner in your left. I'm going to spend 6 to 8 50s just working on that. I'm going to take plenty of rest work and do it right? If you're not going to do it, don't do it at all. Do it right. If you get tired, put your pull between your legs or put paddles on. Do it right, okay? And then maybe the next 6 to 8 50s, however it might be, work on early vertical forearm, putting that next piece, work your way front to back. Don't just pick something random. Connect the pieces, okay? And then after that, maybe you're like, I'm going to do that well. Then I'm going to go and I'm going to work on my finish. So I'm starting on where I reach, early vertical forearm, where I finish. I'm going to put all those pieces together for, 8 50s. Now I've got my way through 20 to 25 50s right now. For the next 15 50s, I'm going to put it all together. I'm going to put the corners, the catch, and the finish. I'm going to put it all together and see what happens. And then you might have to take more rest and then see if it clicks. Don't just mindlessly go through. Try to piece it all together to where it makes sense, to where things, and provide yourself opportunities. That's what has happened with some of the workouts we've given this week. Is I've had multiple athletes text or email or say in Training Peaks, they're like, I had no idea that swimming wide can make such a huge difference. And it's been noticeable. My times have dropped instantly. And it's like, yeah, because you're actually grabbing still water versus grabbing water. Because what happens to most people, they're they move their hand underneath their body, which is human nature. We always go with the path of like least resistance. Where it makes things feel easier, so it must be good. No, it's like to give like an analogy. The pressure, you want to feel pressure, right? On your hand, on your forearms, even on your upper arms, because you can feel the pressure and the grabbing, because that means you're pressing it backwards. The difference in feel should be like walking down an escalator versus walking down the stairs or walking up the stairs. You're not getting that extra, that ease. You can feel the pressure, you can feel the press, and that makes you faster. But it is also something where you have to be very careful when you start to use different technique, different muscle groups. You're going to do what? You're going to fatigue faster. It doesn't mean, right? It's like learning, it's like hopping on the bike. Well, if you can't hold 200 watts, and that's what your goal is, and you can't hold it, and you hold it for 3 minutes one day, does that just mean you just get off the bike and stop? No. You go down to 180 or 160 or 140 so you can ride your bike longer, because that's still going to make you better. For swimming, it's grab the pull buoy, grab the paddles, do something where you can at least increase fitness, your aerobic capacity, or B, and also B, to actually gain technique by being able to do it and removing the ability for, you have to also think about kicking. You think about so much, like you go out to run, you just run, right? You don't have to think about, all right, plant here, press, kick, drive, bring over. You just run. It's mindless to an extent. You can just run. Swimming, people hop in and it's like 7 alarms go off and 7 alerts are, I gotta think about this, gotta think about that, think about this. No, pick one thing. Focus on a thing and then try to bridge it all and marry it together to where it actually makes sense. You can get your stroke to where it actually needs to be, so you become efficient, you become faster, and you get out of the water a lot quicker.
Mm-hmm. And I do think that's a thing that's not really thought about much is taking those small increments, whether it's pushing yourself. Because, if you're starting to grab wide and it's harder out there with still water and you fatigue faster, you're like, man. See, to me, it's always about if – a lot of people are good at that. There's a lot of great swimmers. And then there's a lot of people in the middle. And if you get to a point where you can stay out, maybe 2 inches wider than you normally do, that makes a big difference.
Huge difference.
So it's how do we get there? And it takes time. And that's why I always say, because I think, I'm probably naturally best at cycling. We've had that debate, but what I love to do in cycling is put myself in discomfort or in areas that I'm not comfortable with, because it helps me be more comfortable in a little better place than I used to be, sort of thing. And I think that's what you're talking about in swimming is it does take a little time, but it's so frustrating for people because they want that to happen, I think, in the first week, but it does take a while to build up that fitness. And I think that's when I was talking to, because most people in this sport, and if you're a weightlifter, it's the other way around. You don't work your legs enough usually. But in this sport, most people, because they're used to running and they're cycling a lot, their upper body's probably weak. Mm-hmm. So, I always go back to that Boost Fitness. I forgot what the woman's name was, but she was kind of an Olympic level swimmer. And she said, man, I used to do push-ups all the time. And Carol, I was always... Carter. Yeah, so she said push-ups are the most underrated thing about swimming, and I think that's exactly why. It's just because it helps you be more fit upstairs, and you can start doing things that you're talking about.
And that's when people, because it is hard, right? And it does take a long period of time, and that's the rub on swimming, is that it takes a while. But so does getting better at cycling and running. You just choose to do it more. Mm-hmm. But the great thing about swimming is if I said, if I was like, all right, John, you can take off 15 minutes of your marathon time by doing this, he'd be like, oh, sign me up. I mean, people drop $300 on a pair of ugly ass shoes from Nike. They think they're going to save, they're going to walk in 10 miles in it, but they do it anyway. Yeah. And they wonder why, things go poorly. Same thing on the bike. If you can take 15 minutes off your Ironman bike time, would you do? Oh, sure. They dropped, $2,000 in this. They'll spend $600 on an ugly aero helmet. That probably makes them less aero because it's not the right helmet for them. But when it comes to swimming, they're like, just buy a wetsuit and sign up for a wetsuit swim. That's not that your wetsuit. It's not, the wetsuit makes you faster than you already are. The point is to become faster in general. But the rub on swimming is that it has the fitness piece, and people don't know enough, so they just don't go, they don't do it, so they just become the same speed or they get slower. But it's also the one to where you can be like, what we need to do is you need to quit crossing over. You need to quit over rotating, your hips. Like I was saying yesterday, like when you breathe, don't check the weather, right? I was joking, like when a lot of people breathe, they like take a breath, they like roll over on their side or rotate their hips, and they're staring at the clouds. Like, let's see, I'm taking a breath. Right, today is 56 degrees, partly cloudy. All right, face back in the water. No, look at the side. People do all these things. If you could change just a few things and drop 10 to 15 seconds per 100, be faster and it be easier, you're saving 10 to 15 to 20 minutes on an Ironman swim. And I don't even like to equate that when you talk about like time savings to what it makes up in the swim. I talk about how much faster you'll be able to bike because you're coming out of the water fresh. But I always like to bump that time saved to the run instead of looking at it as like, oh, well, the swim's the swim. I'm like, okay, if you're a 10-minute miler, okay, and you save 20 minutes on the swim, you just drop 2 miles off your marathon. You'd be done 2 miles quicker. 20 minutes gone. You're like, all right, now you're talking my language. Like that sounds a little bit, or you'll be off instead of, if you're a 6-hour biker, you're doing your math, and now you're going to be off the bike 20 minutes earlier. Like you're saving, your 20 minutes is still 20 minutes. Wherever you want to cut it, it's still 20 minutes off your time. Or you can stay in the water longer and be more fatigued when you get to those things. But now is the time of year when you don't have to worry so much about doing, like you said, how am I going to swim 3,000, 4,000 yards? It's like now is the time to like, especially if you're going to make a trip to the gym to lift or to hop on the treadmill because the weather's shitty, hop in the water even for like 1,000 or 1,500 meters and just break it up into 25s and 50s. Do it right. That guy in here earlier was like, so how many times should I swim? I was like, oh, if you can swim like 4 days a week, you can't swim too much. Like there's literally no such thing as swimming too much because most people have spent your entire life not swimming. Yeah. And now it's like, when you think about,
catch up.
Yeah. How many times can I, wrap your brain around this. Even if you swim 3 days a week, which is about one more time a week than most people swim, you're still swimming less than you are swimming. Because you're 4 days in a week and only swimming 3. You're still not doing it more than you are doing it in a technical sport that takes so long to grab and if you're gonna go to the pool and you've only got three chances to do it right and do it for a while. Like stay there for as long as you need to. Save, oh, well, I'm gonna do too much. It's the off season. Well, if you're gonna get there and you only got 3 days a week, then instead of doing 1,500, do 3,000. Break it up how you need to, because it might take you an extra 30 minutes to do it, but that 30 minutes is gonna be totally wiped out by not having to come back or not coming back and driving 15 minutes to the gym and getting undressed and doing it again. Like think about those things and try and piece it together, but just stay focused on it and find. And here's the other thing that I think we do at a rampant rate now is we don't ever ask questions. We just take things for what people say. And like I see this all the time and I know I give master's coaches a hard time. There are plenty of good ones out there, but there are also, just like all teachers and coaches, there are also a lot of crappy ones. Is like, well, why did they tell me to do this? I'm like, no idea. Did you ask him? I'm like, no, I just kind of did it. Always ask for an explanation about why we are doing what we are doing. Why am I having to enter the water like this? Why am I having to, be soft and gentle? Like this guy's even like, I don't want to get through the water because I don't want to draw any attention to myself. And I'm like, well, it also draws attention to yourself, being faster. We want to be faster in the water. Like you have to do these things to be purposeful with what you're doing when you swim. But you have to, and again, you can watch as many videos as you want to watch. You can read as many articles as you want to read in Triathlete magazine. You can hear about what so-and-so's doing down the street. You can go to a master's class or whatever. But until you really know what you're doing wrong, you can't fix it, right? It is not like running. Like, I want to run faster, so I know what I do. I need to go run more. And it's very simple. It's a 1-to-1, right? Swimming is not like that. It's not like when you swim in running and riding. When you tell an athlete to run faster, they just run faster. They just move their legs faster. Cycling, produce more power. Okay, gear down, move your legs faster. More power comes out. Swimming, when you tell someone to swim faster, they usually swim slower because they're like, all right, move my arms faster, use my legs faster. But if your technique is terrible, you're going to go slower with more effort, which is what happens for most people. Know what it is you're not doing right. And that's the piece that I get so often frustrating for a coach is people get so obsessed about times and getting faster and running and riding. But when it comes to swimming, Like, I just kind of, the swim is the swim. You know, I'm just going to kind of get through it. And you're like, wait a minute. Your attention to detail only when it's convenient for you, when it's easy, not when you have to slow down and think about, all right, this is what I do, this is what I do, this is what I do, this is what I don't do, this is what I need to work on. You know, I wrote down 6 things on dry erase board as the athlete was swimming this morning for the first 10 minutes. And when he got done, I was like, all right, this is what we're going to do. We're going to start from the top and work our way to the bottom. And if at any point we get to ones you can't wrap your brain around, we move on to the next one, right? I'm not going to spend 30 minutes doing something you can't wrap your brain around. Find things that work that you can focus on. It's very similar to like hopping on the bike and doing like high cadence, low cadence drills. You know, you're like, oh, this feels good, this feels bad. All right, maybe there's a weakness there, or I'm not very good at low cadence, I'm not very good at high cadence. And that's funny because most people are like, oh, I guess I need to work on high cadence. You know, I guess I need to do some work. They're like excited to like take on something that's challenging, like you said, or something different. In swimming, they're like, just avoid it. You know, I'm just not gonna, I'll go back to like what I'm used to doing because it's too much work to put into it. Yet it's the first thing that we do. And I've said this so many times. All right, next year, 2022, there has been a sweeping change in every governing body from USAT to WTC to ITU. Guess what, guys? The swim's last. We're going to bike, we're going to run, we're going to swim. You would all shit your pants because you'd be like, wait a minute, I got to bike and run and then swim. How am I going to have the energy to do that? I'm going to have to spend so much time. They're like, oh, wait a minute. Oh, the swim's first. And then it affects everything else that you do. And that is just, again, it is a huge piece that people always, I think, underestimate is how important the swim is in terms of they think it's first, it's the shortest distance, the shortest amount of time. Like, when you go swim, you walk out of the pool and you're so much more tired than doing like an hour and a half easy bike, right? And you're starving, but you're like, you know what? But on race day, I just gotta swim 2.4, then I gotta ride easy. It affects everything you do. So take the time, especially this time of year, when you're not having to ask yourself to do hard repeats if you don't need to because a race isn't far away. Get better at the small things right now that are going to set you up for success later. Don't put it off. Figure out what's wrong and then stick with it. Have somebody watch you do it. And then really, because when you hop in the pool and open water, you're not going to have mirrors or a video. You have to feel it, right? You have to know what feels right in the pool. It's like, it clicks. Aha, I feel it. And then stick with it. Don't just not go back to the pool for a month and expect it to be better the next time you go.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's a lot there.
Did I bore you with that?
No, not bore me at all. I just, you grew up swimming and I didn't. So I think that's the interesting parallel here. And for me, being around you for so long is like, I think about things and what you just said, if you want to break down your stroke to simplicity, it's, the entry, the catch, the pull, and the finish. And we're all different body types. We're all different levels of flexibility. We're all different levels of fitness and all these kind of things. So within that little cycle, I think it's good to find out what works for you, what feels a little bit better. Like look for those things because one big thing about me in every sport is I want my mind out of it when I'm in it. You watch a basketball game and you can tell who's not sure what the hell they're supposed to be doing. Mm-hmm. And then other people just flow and they're just not thinking and they're doing shit, They're just doing it because they've done it so much and they've it's not even a thought process anymore. It's a reaction. And I think that's what we want to get to in swimming. And it's hardest because we haven't been doing it that much in our lives. And suddenly we've got, 20 different things we can think about when we're in the water. And for me, I just really like to, you said the last thing you just said was kind of feeling what works. And I think you really have to do that and you have to trust that. And, it's like we're saying, fitness is one thing, but flexibility is another thing. Like, how do you get from point A and point Z in flexibility? It takes a while or whatever. So you have to you can't just start by reaching as wide as possible. I think you can try that, but I think, you're going to find that you're not capable of holding that at all. So I like to work out, get a little bit more bold with my catches and, just get that still water a little more, but take time, man. And I think the other thing is like, you can't cheat in swimming. And you go out and ride, I got a bike ride today. Oh, it's supposed to be this, and that. You kind of might fudge it or whatever. Yeah, and you kind of like cruise down the road a little bit and this and that. But in the water, you're just going to sink or...
You can cheat. Like I can coast, right?
I can coast. There's all these things and it's a lot easier to do that. So it's the reality is it's just difficult to practice that. But I like the idea of breaking it into small bites that you can handle, working on things like that, so they just become instinctual versus a thought process.
Yeah, and
like if you're thinking too much in the water, you're in trouble.
Because you're doing everything slowly, right? And you're not like, and you can't really pay attention to your surroundings because like you said, like there's so much to think about. And that's when people like get to the point where, and I think that's why people are obviously like get so nervous and anxious about swimming in general, is because, you know, when you get tired on the bike, you coast, right? Or you can just get off, you know. Running, you know what you can do? Walk, right? Walk, hike, stop, sit on a curb. Well, guess what? When you get 800 yards in the middle of an open water, no matter what you're doing, and you get tired or you get out of breath, guess what you got to do? Keep swimming. You know, there's like, you can breaststroke, but even then, like you've already reached that point. And so when people spend so much of their time overthinking and thinking, you're thinking yourself into this like slow as molasses, like methodical. You want to talk about like the death march on the run? People just start off in a death march on the swim, like this slow, and then they're surprised with how quickly they can get out of breath, and then they're not used to it, and then all their alarms go off, and they stop even thinking about what they're doing. They just start flailing and working hard to go nowhere. But it is like you said, that's why it is, because it's so overwhelming, and that's like one of the pieces when we start working with athletes and they get a swim workout, like, finally, I know what to do and I go. Like I have something with purpose, and not like, do 5 200s and leave. You know, it's like, we try to at least try to give things and cues and things to allow athletes to think and feel one thing at a time. Not, all right, today we're going to work on 33 different things in your 2,000-yard swim. You're like, what? Like, what? Mm-hmm. I don't know. It feels like you're swimming into the Matrix. Like that's way too much. It needs to be things that are simple, that allow you, again, opportunities to just have one thing click and then run with it. Like just beat it into your skull before you move on to the next. But that's something that we, as people, love to do, is like either want to do it all at once or none of it. And there's like that all in or nothing. It's like, I don't want to go because I don't really know what to do, so I just won't go swim. And then you're like, I wonder why I'm not getting faster. Well, you probably barely averaged over 2 swims a week, if that, over the course of the year. You think that's going to get you better, right? When you multiply that, I'm like, hey, I didn't swim 200 plus days and I swam less than 100. What do you think is going to cement? You not doing it? No, it's like you got to do it to get better at it. No matter what level athlete you are, you've got to. That's just where it's at. But you have to know, if you really want to use your time wisely, find things that work. Find things that you can focus on, because what it also does is listen, we all suck at things we don't have a purpose for, right? We don't have a why. There is an intention to doing it. When you go to the pool and you have a purpose and you have an intention, everything becomes different. You feel more invested. You're like, you feel more empowered to make a difference and know what you're doing and know how to change things, versus I gotta go swim 2,000 today and just mindlessly go through 2,000 yards, not learning anything. Almost every swim, you should have some kind of opportunity to feel something or to see something or to notice some kind of difference that clicks, that makes sense. That's what's going to allow you to get better, and that's what's going to allow you to be a better swimmer and ultimately a better triathlete.
Mm-hmm. And you said something there that, just going, because most of us will go and do 2,000, maybe 3 times, whatever it is, 3 times a week. And the one thing that I have to say is, like, whenever I want to get into swim shape and get my form back in, shape, I go a lot. And I'll be honest, I don't necessarily always go with those purposeful, workouts in my mind or whatever. But what I do is go often. So, and I'm talking about every day for like 2 weeks or something like that. I get kind of like obsessive with that. But to me, what happens is, like, I don't know if I assume a lot of people are like this. They'll get done with a 2,000 and be like, man, I really had it today. I got it. And then they go back 2 or 3 days later and they forgot what they were doing, or they don't have the same feel for it. It's not in their head. But so that's what I find when I go every day. It sort of just starts sticking around and I kind of cement it in. And that's why I feel like that really helps me, is sort of these intense blocks of things. And I think a lot of people do that with running, and, we run a lot. And And I don't see anything wrong with going to the pool every day for a while, just it becomes sort of its own purpose, of just getting there. And then you're comfortable in the water whenever you jump in, that it's not as cold after a week or two, all those types of things kind of start falling away out of your system. And I just feel like it always makes me a better swimmer.
Well, what you said there, even if you're not, when you're swimming that frequently, because you hear swimmers all the time talk about, we can wrap it up after this, was like, when you hear swimmers, they always talk about feel for the water.
Yeah,
it's hard to get feel for the water when you swim once a week or twice a week. So you can't really recognize or have the proprioception, the awareness of what your stroke is doing and where it should feel and how it should feel when you barely ever go. But what you said, even when you might not have a quote unquote purpose when you go swim, when you're swimming that frequently, your feel for the water is heightened. Like when swimmers swim a lot and they take a break from the pool, they're like, yeah, it takes me a couple sessions to get back, get my feel back for the water. They're not talking about, yeah, it takes me like going once a week for a couple months to get no. They talk about going back to the pool for 3 to 4 swims because that's when you get the feel for the water back. That is working because you can actually have, that's what a lot of pro triathletes do. Like it's all about getting the feel for the water, because if you can feel it, then you can do the things you need to do within it instead of just moving your arms. Like sometimes I'll say like, I don't know it's hard for me to tell what you're thinking when you swim, because it looks to me like your arms and your body just exist within the water. They don't have a purpose. They can't feel what they're doing. They're just basically moving within the water, trying to get from point A to point B. You have to feel the water to grab it and push it and pull it back to make you go fast. If you can't feel it, you're not grabbing it. And that's something that you have to do with frequency. So like you said, you might not be going in with a, specific intent to work on your catch, but when you go that frequently, your feel is so heightened that you have more awareness to feel the things that might be going right or the things that might be going wrong.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's almost like if you're trying to be a boxer and all you do is throw air punches, you don't really understand what where your power is coming from until you start hitting the heavy bag or whatever.
Yeah, or sparring or doing something, or getting from the thing, hopping in the ring. It's like, it's all very different, but you have to do it frequently like that. And that's the hardest piece of the puzzle. It's like doing it twice a week. We'll never be great podcasters. We'll always be mediocre.
Swim, bike, and run 5 days a week, everything.
Yeah, that's what we'll get.
I know it feels like that.
I can't wait to get the emails like, oh, wait a minute. And it's like, how do you fit it all together? It's a puzzle. It's challenging. It's hard. Just like life. We will get to, I was jonesing for a swim cast, so just 3 swim analysis in 24 hours. I was feeling it. So we didn't tease you. We will get to. It was more
familiar. You were doing it more.
Exactly. Listen. I probably gave better swim instruction this morning than I gave yesterday. Sorry, Katie's, because I had just done 3. Because you're like, we did this yesterday. It's like, it's all top of mind. It's everything we do is about frequency, consistency, and it makes it easier and more effortless. But we'll make Monday's cast. We'll do it on the Q&A that you guys are doing right now. If you're just listening to this, we will keep that thread going. Make it last through the weekend. Drop any question. Yeah, through the new year, drop as many questions as you want to. We will start chipping away at those on Monday. As always, if you're interested in the club membership, coming to the hub for a visit, swim analysis, coaching, anything, camps, you name it, gear, go to our website, C26Triathlon.com. It's a one-stop shop for all those things. Click on the club tab, the coaching tab. That's where you can find that out. You can follow us on Instagram, C26 Triathlon. It's a great place to get a feel for our community. That's it. That's all I got. Have a wonderful weekend. Good luck to everybody doing Haines City is 70.3. It might be chilly. It might be hot. Who knows? That's it. That's all I got. You got anything else?
I don't. Just follow us on the gram. Let's pump those numbers. I know you did.
Just don't
check us out.
Check us out. Just don't yeet. Don't yeet yourself this weekend. See you, dude. See you, man.